The dog stood frozen in the middle of the falling
his
snow.
body trembling,
but his feet refusing to move. Cars rushed past him on the dark country road. Their headlights slicing through the storm. Yet he didn't flinch, not even once. His ribs showed through his dirty fur. One paw bleeding onto the ice below. But his eyes stayed locked on the cardboard box beside him. Whatever was inside that box mattered more than the pain, more than his own life. And if no one stopped soon, both of them were going to die out there. I share news stories here, and I would really appreciate it if you hit subscribe and liked my video. Now let's jump back into my story. I sure you love it. You keep listening till the end. Snow gathered on the dog's back like a white blanket as the night grew quieter. The road was almost empty now. Most people were already home and warm, safe, sitting beside heaters and dinner tables. No one noticed the silent guardian standing guard over a forgotten box near the ditch. No one. Except fate. Write in the comments and tell me which part of the world you're watching this story from. I'm really interested to see how far this story has traveled. Inside was a sound so weak it could barely be called a cry. A tiny life, soaked to the bone, curled against a torn towel that smelled of oil and cardboard. The kitten's body shook uncontrollably. Her breathing shallow, sealed shut with cold. She didn't know where her mother was. She didn't know how she ended up here. She only knew that warmth was leaving her body fast. The dog lowered his head and nudged the box gently with his nose, as if urging her to hold on. Hours earlier, he had found her abandoned near a farm fence. Barely moving. He could have walked away. Stray dogs did that all the time. Survival demanded selfishness. But something in her weak cry had stopped him. So he had dragged the box inch by painful inch through the snow, leaving faint red streaks behind him until he reached the road. If humans were going to save her, this was the only place they would see. A pickup truck finally slowed down. Jack Turner had driven this road for 20 years, delivering supplies to nearby towns. He almost didn't stop. He was tired, and eager to get home. But then he saw the shape in the headlights, a dog perfectly still, staring at a box like his life depended on it. Jack pulled over. The wind slapped his face as he stepped out. Boots crunching against the ice. Hey there, buddy. He called softly, raising his hands so the dog wouldn't panic. What are you doing out here in this weather? The dog didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply lifted his injured paw and placed it on the edge of the box. Jack frowned. Confused. Then crouched down. When he pulled back the flap of cardboard, caught in his throat. Oh no, sweetheart. Inside was the kitten so small Jack could have held her in one hand. Her fur was stiff with ice. Her tiny chest fluttered weakly. Jack immediately wrapped her in his scarf, pressing her gently against his chest to share warmth. She didn't cry. She barely moved. The dog whined once a low. Broken sound, then limped closer. Eyes never leaving the kitten. You did this. Jack whispered. Looking at the dog in disbelief. You brought her here. The dog didn't understand the words, but he understood the tone. His tail moved once, slow and tired. Jack opened the truck door. Come on, both of you. Let's get you help. The dog hesitated only a second before curling his body protectively around Jack's hands. Not for comfort, not for warmth, but to stay close to the tiny life he had refused to abandon at the animal clinic. Chaos erupted the moment Jack burst through the door. Vets rushed the kitten away, placing her in a heated incubator. Words like hypothermia, critical condition filled the room. The dog lay down beside the glass wall of the incubator and refused to move. He didn't eat. He didn't drink. He didn't sleep. He just watched. Because somewhere deep inside his broken body, the dog believed one thing with absolute certainty. He stopped guarding her now. She wouldn't make it. And outside, the snow kept falling. The dog had been lying there for nearly 12 hours without blinking. When the veterinarian finally said the words no one wanted to hear. If she makes it through the night, it'll be a miracle. The lights in the clinic hummed softly. Machines beeped in slow, uncertain rhythms. And behind the glass wall, the kitten's tiny body rose and fell, like it was borrowing breaths from time itself. The dog didn't react to the words. He didn't need hope spoken out loud. He just stayed. The staff had tried everything. They brought him water. In a steel bowl, slid it gently toward his nose. He sniffed it once. And turned his head back toward the incubator. A young technician crouched beside him, whispering encouragement. He didn't touch it. Not because he wasn't hungry, but because leaving his post, even for a second, felt impossible. He's guarding her. The technician whispered to Jack. Really guarding. Jack nodded slowly. He'd seen loyalty before. He'd owned dogs his whole life. But this was different. This wasn't obedience or affection. This was devotion. Raw and unexplainable. The vet, Dr. Morales, knelt beside the dog and examined his injured paw. The wound was deep, infected and swollen. He needs treatment. She said gently. If we don't clean this, he could lose the paw. The dog tensed when she touched him not in fear, but in protest. His eyes flicked to the incubator, then back to her hand, as if to say, not now. I'll do it right here. Dr. Morales decided. He's not leaving. So they treated him beside the glass. They cleaned the wound. Wrapped it carefully, and gave him antibiotics. He flinched once, but never moved his body away from the kitten's sight. When it was done, he laid his head back down. Exhausted, still fixed forward. That night, the clinic grew quiet. Jack had gone home reluctantly, promising to return at first light. The staff took turns watching over both patients. Snow piled against the windows outside, thick and heavy, cutting the world off from the rest of the town. Around 3:17 a.m., the incubator alarm beeped. A nurse rushed over, heart pounding. The kitten's breathing had slowed dangerously. Her body temperature dipped again. Dr. Morales was called in immediately. And for the first time since they'd arrived, the dog stood up. He limped closer to the glass, pressing his nose against it. A soft sound escaped his throat. Not a whine. But something closer to a plea. His tail curled tightly around his legs, as if he were bracing himself. Easy boy, the nurse whispered, fighting tears. We're trying. They adjusted the heat. Administered fluids. Rubbed her tiny paws to stimulate circulation. Minutes stretched into something unbearable. Then the kitten moved. Just slightly. A twitch of her paw. A faint shudder of her whiskers. The room froze. There, Dr. Morales breathed. She's responding. The dog let out a shaky breath and slowly lowered himself back to the floor. As if his strength had been holding the night together, finally loosen its grip by morning. The storm outside had eased. Pale sunlight filtered through the windows, revealing a world coated in white. Jack arrived with coffee and a heavy heart, expecting the worst. Instead, Dr. Morales met him with a tired smile. She's still alive, she said. And that dog of yours? I swear he's the reason. Jack crouched beside him, rubbing the dog's neck gently. You hear that, buddy? You did good. The dog didn't react to the praise. His attention was elsewhere. Because inside the incubator, the kitten's eyes fluttered. They didn't open fully. Not yet. not yet. But for the first time since she'd been pulled from the snow, she was trying to wake up, and the watcher by the glass saw his ears lifted. His body leaned forward. His tail thumped the floor once slow, restrained. Hope had entered the room, and it wasn't leaving easily. The first sound the kitten made wasn't a cry, was a breath that caught halfway in. Like her body had forgotten how to finish the motion. The monitor beeped faster, and every person in the room leaned forward at once. But the dog didn't move. He only watched, muscles tense, eyes wide, as if any sudden motion might shatter the fragile moment unfolding behind the glass. Dr. Morales adjusted the incubator settings carefully. Easy, she whispered. More to herself than anyone else. Easy, little one. The kitten's eyelids trembled. Just a fraction. Barely enough to notice. But the dog noticed. His head lifted fully now. His ears stood tall for the first time since arriving at the clinic. The exhaustion weighing on his body seemed to loosen, replaced by something fragile and bright recognition. As if he'd been waiting for this exact sign to finally believe the fight wasn't over. Jack stood beside him, holding his breath. Look at that, he murmured. She's trying. The kitten's eyes opened to unfocused and glassy. The world she saw was nothing like the warmth bright lights. She needed bright lights. Strange sounds, unfamiliar smells. But still, she looked. Her tiny mouth parted, and a thin, breathy sound escaped her throat. It was weak. But it was life. The dog pressed his nose to the glass. Not hard, desperately. Just enough to let her know she wasn't alone. That was when something extraordinary happened. The kitten turned her head. No one could explain how she sensed him through the glass. The machines, the noise, but her unfocused eyes drifted toward the dog's shape. Her breathing steadied, just a little. Her body relaxed, just a little. The room went silent. Do you see that? A nurse whispered. Dr. Morales nodded slowly. She recognizes him. From that moment on, the kitten improved in small but undeniable ways. Her temperature stabilized. Her breathing became more regular. She accepted tiny drops of formula from a syringe, with visible effort. Each step forward was fragile, but it was forward. They named her Luna. It felt right. Something small that survived the dark. The dog, still unnamed, finally allowed himself to eat when Luna slept. He gulped the food down quickly, eyes never leaving the incubator. Even when he rested, his body remained angled toward like an invisible thread connected them. Over the next 2 days, the clinic staff grew attached to the pair. He's not just a stray, one tech said. He's her anchor. They tried moving him to a quieter room once. He made it 3 steps before stopping cold, refusing to go any farther. When they brought him back beside Luna, he lay down immediately satisfied. On the third morning, Dr. Morales opened the incubator. Let's see how she does with contact, she said softly. Jack's heart pounded. The dog's entire body stiffened, but he didn't move away. He trusted them now. Or maybe he trusted her strength. Dr. Morales gently lifted Luna wrapped in a warm blanket, and knelt beside the dog. Easy, she murmured. The dog leaned forward, sniffing carefully. Luna's nose twitched. Then, slowly, unsteadily, she lifted her tiny head into the dog's chest. It was clumsy. Perfect. The dog froze, then lowered himself carefully, curling his body around her without touching her with his injured paw. His tail wrapped protectively around her
shielding
back,
her
like he had in the snow. Luna climbed onto his side and fell asleep. For the first time since Jack had seen him, the dog closed his eyes, not out of exhaustion, out of peace. Photos spread quickly after that. One image in in particular, captured hearts everywhere. The large, battered dog curled around the kitten, no bigger than his paw. Both asleep beneath the clinic window fell softly outside. Messages poured in. Offers to adopt donations. People asking for updates every hour. But one question remained unanswered. What would happen to them next? Because while Luna was getting stronger, the dog still had no home. And fate wasn't finished with them yet. By the end of the week, Luna was strong enough to stand on her own. She wobbled like a newborn deer. Tiny legs shaking as she took uncertain steps across a soft towel. Every time she stumbled, the dog was there. Unmoving. His body forming a wall she could lean against. The clinic staff laughed softly when they saw it. But there was an ache behind their smiles. Strength meant progress. Progress meant decisions. Dr. Morales gathered everyone in her office that afternoon. Jack sat near the window. Hands clasped. Two technicians leaned against the wall. The dog lay at Jack's feet. Luna curled between his paws. Asleep. We need to talk about next steps, Dr. Morales said carefully. Jack already knew what was coming. Luna will be ready for adoption in a few weeks. She continued. She'll need a warm, quiet home. Someone experienced. She's been through trauma. Jack nodded. And him. He asked quietly. Dr. Morales hesitated. That's more complicated. The dog had healed well, but his paw would always be stiff. He was older. How old? No one knew. He had scars that told stories no one could fully read. Stray dogs like him were harder to place. Families wanted puppies. People wanted easy. And together. Jack asked. Dr. Morales sighed. We don't usually adopt across species. It's not standard practice. The room fell silent. That night, the clinic lights dimmed, and snow returned, tapping softly against the windows. Jack stayed longer than usual, sitting on the floor beside the dog. Luna crawled up his leg, purring faintly, then returned to her place between the dog's paws. You saved her. Jack whispered. You know that, right? The dog didn't look at him. His gaze stayed on Luna. The post went live the next morning. A dog refused to leave a dying kitten in the snow. Now they might be separated. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of shares. Comments pouring in from across the country. People crying over their phones. Others angry. Some pleading. Don't break them apart. They chose each other. I'll take both. Or not. Talk was easier than commitment. Dozens of people applied for Luna alone. Only a handful asked about the dog. Fewer still asked about both. Then one message stood out. It came from a retired nurse named Margaret Hale. I lost my husband last winter. She wrote. The house has been too quiet ever since. I don't want one of them. I want both. If they come as a pair, they'll stay a pair for the rest of their lives. Jack read it twice. Then a third time. Margaret visited the clinic 2 days later. She moved slowly. Her hair silver, and her eyes kind. She knelt on the floor without hesitation. Well, she said softly, extending her hand. You must be the brave one. The dog sniffed her fingers, then looked back at Luna, if asking permission. Luna squeaked, and climbed onto his back. The dog wagged his tail once. Margaret laughed through tears. I think that's a yes. The paperwork was finalized the following week. On adoption day, snow fell again lighter, almost gentle. Jack helped load Margaret's car with supplies. He crouched beside the dog one last time, resting his forehead against his. You did something incredible. Jack said. You changed lives. The dog licked his hand once. As the car pulled away, Luna peeked out from her blanket. Eyes bright, eyes bright, tail flicking. The dog sat tall beside her, but calm. Alert, but calm. For the first time, they weren't guarding survival. They were heading toward home. And none of them knew it yet. What waited for them there would heal more than just broken bodies. Margaret's house sat at the end of a quiet street, wrapped in winter stillness. The yard was small, bordered by a white fence that hadn't been opened in months. As the car came to a stop, the dog looked out the window, ears lifting, testing the air. Luna stirred inside her blanket, letting out a tiny chirp. The house smelled like old wood, and something faintly sad, but beneath it all was warmth. Margaret opened the door slowly. Welcome home, she said. Her voice trembling just enough to give her away. The dog stepped inside first, careful and cautious. His nails clicking against the hardwood floor. He paused, scanning the space like a soldier entering unfamiliar territory. No threats, no shouting. Just silence and a fireplace glowing gently in the corner. Luna wriggled free of the blanket and tumbled onto the rug, rolling onto her back. The dog froze. The dog gently lowered himself, placing his body between her and the rest of the room. Guarding was instinct now. Margaret knelt, slipping down her cheeks. You don't have to protect anyone, she whispered. You're safe. It took days for the house to change. At first, the dog slept near the door, waking at every sound. He refused the soft bed Margaret bought, choosing the cold floor instead. Luna stayed glued to his side, only when he did. When he ate, she watched. When he slept, she climbed onto his back. But almost imperceptibly, the walls began to soften. Margaret started talking again, not to herself, but to them. She told them about her husband, about the winters they'd shared, about the nights she'd eaten dinner alone and left his chair empty. The dog listened, head tilted slightly. Luna purred like she understood every word. One night, the dog moved closer to the fireplace, just an inch. The next night, he rested his chin on the edge of the dog bed. By the end of the week, he curled up fully inside it, with Luna tucked under his chest. Margaret covered her mouth and cried so she wouldn't wake them. The first real test came during a storm. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the windows. Luna startled, scrambling clumsily across the floor. The dog stood immediately, placing himself over her eyes, muscles tense. Margaret sat on the floor beside them, heart racing. It's okay, she whispered. You're not alone. She reached out slowly. The dog hesitated, then leaned into her hand. It was the first time he'd asked for comfort instead of offering it. From that night on, everything changed. They went on short walks. Neighbors stopped to stare, then smiled. Children waved. Someone took a photo and posted it online. That's the snow dog and the kitten. The caption read, Margaret laughed for the first time in months. She named the dog Shadow because he followed Luna everywhere. Because he had lived in the edges of life, until love pulled him into the light. Winter turned softer. Luna grew stronger, faster, bolder. She chased dust motes, attacked shoelaces, and slept in the strangest places. Shadow watched her like a proud guardian, intervening only when she climbed too high, ventured too close to the door. And every night, when the house grew quiet, Margaret sat by the fire beside her shadow's head on her knee. Luna curled in his fur. The silence that once hurt began to heal. The house was breathing again. And none of them realized yet that the world was still watching. The first snowfall of the new winter came quietly, dusting the yard in white before dawn. Margaret stood at the window with a mug, warming her hands, watching shadows still on the rug. Luna was perched on his back, like she belonged there, her tail flicking lazily as she watched the snowflakes fall. Shadow didn't bark. He didn't move. He just stayed exactly the way he always had. Margaret smiled through a familiar tightness in her chest. A year ago, this sight would have broken her. It held her together. Shadow's limp was still there. A faint reminder of the road he guarded with his life. But he no longer slept with one eye open. He no longer flinched at passing cars or sudden sounds. The fear that once lived in his bones had softened into something gentler. Something like trust. Luna, on the other hand, had no memory of the cold. She raced through the house like she owned it, skidding across floors, climbing furniture, knocking pens off tables. Shadow followed at a careful distance, stepping in only when danger appeared. When she tired herself she always returned to him, curling against his chest, climbing onto his back, like the world's safest place was right there. Margaret had taken them both to the vet that morning for a routine checkup. The staff recognized them instantly. It's them. Someone whispered. Photos were taken again. Stories retold. Shadow lay calm while Luna explored the counter, everything with dramatic interest. Dr. Morales laughed softly. You know, she said, I've seen a lot of miracles in my career. But this one stays with you. On the way home, Margaret stopped at the same stretch of road where Jack had found them. She didn't tell anyone. She just stepped out and stood there for a moment as snow drifted down. Shadow watched her from the car, ears alert. Luna pressed her face to the window. Margaret whispered a thank you to the storm. To whatever force had made a broken dog refused to walk away. Life settled into something beautifully ordinary after that. Morning walks, sunlit naps, evenings by the fire. Margaret began volunteering again. She smiled more. She slept better. When neighbors asked how she was doing, she surprised herself by answering honestly. I'm okay, she'd say. I really am. One evening, as she scrolled through her phone, she came across the old photo taken at the clinic. Shadow curled around Luna, snow falling softly outside the window. Millions of people had seen it. Thousands had commented. But one line stood out more than all the rest. Real love doesn't shout. Sometimes it just stays. Margaret set the phone down and looked at them. Shadow lifted his head and met her eyes, thumping gently against the floor. Luna chirped and climbed higher onto his back, kneading his fur before settling in. And Margaret understood something simple and profound. They hadn't just saved each other. They had chosen each other. On snowy mornings, Shadow still sits by the window, not afraid, not guarding, just watching the world move. Luna naps on his back, and fearless. And Margaret sits nearby, wrapped in a blanket, her house full in ways she never expected again. Because love doesn't always arrive loud or dramatic. Sometimes it comes limping through the snow, exhausted, and refuses to leave a box behind. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. If this story touched your heart, make sure to like and subscribe for more real, powerful stories like this. Your support helps keep these moments alive and shared. Thanks for watching till end. Please like and subscribe my channel. I will be very thankful to you.